think we've just turned the hour. So what we'll get things started and do a few introductions. So again, thank you very much for everybody joining us today, and welcome to the latest in the Pure IP Coffee Club Live series. Today we're going to be looking at Copilot, which has been a very exciting topic, and it's certainly stimulated a lot of interest throughout people, hence the number of people on the call today, which is fantastic. And I thought I'd lost you for a minute there, gentlemen. So we're going to be looking at what is Copilot and the leveraging of it and etc. But before we get into the weeds of it and the details, I've joined by two experts in the field, and if you both gents like to introduce yourself, perhaps Tom, if you'd like to start first, and then we'll go on to Chris.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Tom Arbuthnot, so long-time Microsoft MVP and Solutions Director at Pure IP as well.
Hi, guys. I'm Chris Wheeler. I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft in the Modern Work team, focusing around productivity and also Copilot for Microsoft 365. So, yeah, really happy to be here to support.
And
very excited about Copilot, I think, aren't you?
I bet. Yeah, always.
You're not supporting Chris, you're leading. That's what we agreed, right?
That's what you said.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jensen. I appreciate you spending the time to help share the knowledge and the wisdom that you have and the experiences. So without further ado, we'll start to kick off. And I think, Chris, I'm gonna throw the first question to yourself. And I think let's level set a little bit in terms of, giving the audience a little bit of an understanding of what Copilot is, the sort of the variants of it, and how it works.
Yeah, of course. So as you are very much aware, we've been doing a lot of work in the field of AI since before, open AI in general. So we're very much trying to be a pioneer and be revolutionary in that regard. So where Copilot came from, we effectively worked with the team over at OpenAI to start working on some generative AI tools that we can bake into the solutions that we already provide and sell to our customers. We came up with the term Copilot simply because it's kind of like that assistant that's there by your side, but never really takes over control. So it's always there as like a like that virtual assistant to help us generate content, summarize content, explore content, and even in some cases as well, educate ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. So what we've done previously as well is that we first looked at offering Copilot in all the individual solutions. So you'll see a Copilot in pretty much every Microsoft technology, whether that's Dynamics, Azure, security, Microsoft 365, of course. And then moving forwards, what we wanted to do as well is to have like a consistent experience between all of them and have a lot of a little bit of overlap, as it were. So you'd have like a single Copilot interface, and that would then integrate into all of your various different licenses like M365 Dynamics. So that's kind of where we came up with the idea of just calling it Copilot. It's like the overarching product. And then we've then got all the individual products which you see and you hear about already. So there's things like Copilot in Windows, there's Copilot in Bing, there's loads of different things that we're doing. Copilot in Power Platform, the list goes on. And it also follows like our mission statement as well about empowering everyone in every organization to do more. And by having all the great Microsoft tools that we already have, it sort of goes along the fact that it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, what device you're using, what Microsoft application you're utilizing. There's going to be a Copilot there to help you every step of the way. So that's a little bit of an introduction of where we are with Copilot. Now, how it works is everything really starts with a prompt. Copilot's never going to be automated. It's never going to be there taking over. It always has to be triggered by a request from a user. So everything starts off with a prompt or a request into Copilot. And depending on the service that it latches on or retrieves content from, be that, your Microsoft 365 data, maybe say like in security, it'll be like, your telemetry from your data logs or little bits and pieces like that. So it's then able to then work within the solutions that we've trained the models on. and be able to produce some really good outcomes. We do that by basically taking that content, and then we have got things like our large language models, which then we've pre-built and we've trained up with the OpenAI team to basically be able to understand our intent and be able to respond in a way that aligns with our requests. So, for example, if I'm in Word, for example, I ask it to create a risk assessment about something, and then all of that then gets done, sent off to the LLM, and then comes back in a timely manner as well. So there's some really good things happening in the background, which then helps to basically reduce the time it takes to perform these actions. The best thing I like about it is to basically reduce the effort it takes to do things as well. So there's a lot of talk about, you know, the mental energy it takes to perform certain tasks, and certainly the more mundane tasks as well. And in some cases as well, increase the quality of our output as well. So like in terms of, like, say, you know, catching up on a missed meeting, the actual quality of maybe possibly talking about what was missed during the meetings, or possibly even like the outcome of our emails, our documents. There's some really good things happening there as well. But yeah, everything starts with a prompt, so it always has to be triggered by the user that's using Copilot.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. What I find fascinating is that the subject or the topic of AI has been around for years, but actually now it seems as if it's being applied in a way that really helps the business and helps the individual to do more and be more efficient, actually, as you rightly say. So I think it's a fascinating topic, which is probably why we've got so much interest in it going around. And I think that you alluded to a few little scenarios there, Chris, and perhaps Tom, I can bring you in on this. And again, what sort of scenarios and use cases in that are you seeing this sort of Copilot being suited to?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as Chris said, it's kind of it's a family of products. So it's both a product and a family of products, because God bless Microsoft's marketing naming, right? But kind of what was called Bing Chat is now the base Copilot. So the kind of web-based chat experience. So that's where, you know, consumers can get to it. You don't need a license. You can do your kind of basic, you know, kind of asking questions and creating content. And then you step up into the different types of Copilot. So there's then Copilot with commercial data protection, which is basically the same thing. Keep me honest, Chris, but, you know, kind of has the commercial data protection wrap, so enterprises can use it a bit more securely. Where we really step into some really exciting functionality in the kind of knowledge worker and therefore Teams and Teams phone space is when you're Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. So the Copilot where it's integrating, or the Copilot capabilities of integrating into Teams, into Excel, into Outlook. It's the whole suite. Specifically, obviously, for me, super focused on Teams. I think it's one of the stronger use cases for AI, because you can summarize chats, you can summarize meetings, you can ask, you know, kind of for summaries as the meeting's running, and all those same capabilities you so often see demoed in meetings are also available in Teams Phone. And I think a lot of people miss that, is that yes, meetings is a really obvious and really strong use case. But once you start using Copilot, you kind of get used to using it. You want it on all your comms, and that's where Teams Phone, being able to press that button and have it run during a classic phone call, is really powerful as well.
Yeah, and I think it just takes from the participants. It means you're focusing more on the call rather than on taking the notes and trying to remember something. And certainly, I know I suffer from that from time to time. And Chris, I mean, can you elaborate any more? Is there other use cases you're seeing that are different to any of that?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, like touching on what Tom said, it's largely around, you know, what you're already using your Microsoft 365 applications for. So, you know, if you feel a need to, you know, use more, you know, have more assistance in your meetings or your phone calls, because, you know, the topics of conversation could be quite varied or complex, then, you know, AI assistants can obviously look at the transcript and help you there. But, you know, we see lots of other job functions. So like, you know, say finance, heavy Excel hitters, you know, real, you know, large formulas and big tables where, you know, Copilot can dissect that and produce really great data insights, suggest new formulas in there as well that we've seen. analyze spreadsheets as such, or say like, you're in marketing, you do a lot of things in PowerPoint. There's loads of things around, creativity boost with using Copilot, and especially tapping into Designer, where we're doing a lot of things there with DALL-E and creating AI, images there as well. So some really good things happening. But yeah, it really depends on the job role, what you're mainly focused on. Some really good use cases with, the creative piece, the creation of content. We're also seeing a lot of time save, those real heavy hitters in M365 as well. So, the real key personas that are in back-to-back meetings all the time, they maybe say create 4 documents a day. There's massive burnout, there's productivity paranoia that we still see since the days of COVID. So, we want to try and save them a lot of time as well, where maybe they are working overtime, or they're burnt out, and we give them time back where they could either spend it, doing what they need to do in their personal life, spend it with family and be more happy, or actually in their job roles, focusing more around innovation and the things that really excite them as well. So that's other really good use cases there as well. So looking at the tools, but then what the impact is of having that time saved.
Yeah, how you apply it is critical in all of these cases, isn't it, with any new technology? But there is an interesting question actually that I see, Tom, you've seen on the chat that's come through, and it might be worth us just covering that now. And that is very much around, does Copilot pose any threat to the adoption of Microsoft Teams rooms? Or can the two happily exist?
Yeah, it's a great question, because obviously when you think about Copilot, you're thinking about using it on your desktop, on your laptop, in your personal meeting. It's your personal assistant. But actually, with Microsoft Teams rooms, those rooms have the technology to understand, if you voice enroll, who's saying what in a meeting. And you can also optionally again enroll your face profile as well. So the meeting is then picking up all the people in the meeting room, what they individually said, which feeds the transcript, which means that the Copilot summaries will actually be better. So for the best experience in Copilot, you actually need the Microsoft Teams room to do that, knowing who said what. Otherwise, you end up with a transcript that says meeting room said, which doesn't work so well in Copilot. So yeah, it's a really valid question, but actually I think Copilot will spur people on to get meeting rooms out with this technology. And obviously we're at the beginning of the journey, so you can imagine that story across MTR and Teams is going to get stronger and stronger around AI.
Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Chris? I saw you.
No, 100% agree to what Tom said. Yeah, in terms of like where we see, shared resources are always going to be slightly difficult in terms of, that personal Copilot touch. So what I'm asking Copilot for, but like Tom said, breaking out the transcription to different people and like you said, trying to get some clarity over what was said, action points, that side of things works really well. So yeah, fully agree with all of it.
Fabulous. So I mean, that moves us on. I mean, we've been sort of waxing lyrical for the last sort of 10-12 minutes in terms of the benefits of Copilot and what it can do for the user, the productivity, the efficiency, the workflow, etc., etc. But what are some of the things as a corporate business owner or an IT director or a CIO, what are some of the things that the business might need to consider when they're sort of evaluating Copilot? And I mean, I guess some of the obvious things are sort of security and governance and those sort of things, but what else is there that we need to think about?
Yeah. So I think to go back to basics, there needs to be a common goal or, a need that needs to be identified. And that's going to come from various different departments and, pain points that maybe might be there, or maybe you're trying to introduce a new process that's going to streamline, your processes in your operations. Obviously, the considerations with the Microsoft 365 is, of course, it's going to be looking at your M365 data. It will be given the opportunity to potentially surface information that the user has got access to, which they might not have known about before. So things like public SharePoint sites, and you'll see this term that gets used a lot by Microsoft around the indexing. And there's like 2 levels of indexing where I'll be able to work with you on all the documents that you've already accessed before, and all your chats and emails, because that's yours. But obviously the real value of Copilot as well is the exploration piece, where if I ask a certain question about a project or a customer or something, then it's going to look at those public sites as well and find the information which might be beneficial for me based on what I've asked for around the actual intent, around the semantics. So like, for example, if I ask about electric vehicles, it might say, right, Tom's worked very closely with electric vehicles. We're going to have a look at things Tom's been working on. Or maybe like there's another prompt, or there's another piece of the prompt that we're going to add that's going to include the words BMW, Honda, Hyundai, and all that good stuff as well. So there's obviously a risk, of course, around oversharing of information, looking at how we are storing our files as an organization. There's things around unprotected documents as well. So if you have sensitive content, is it encrypted? Is it labeled correctly? There's a lot of sort of housekeeping that we recommend our customers to look at and consider to begin with before possibly looking at Copilot. But having said that, we've also got customers that accept the risk that if users already have access to these files, then there's nothing stopping them from doing it manually. It's just that Copilot's going to do it a bit quicker and obviously in a shorter time frame. So customers, some customers that we've worked with just accept that risk that even if the content is then retrieved by Copilot and sent to our LLM, they understand that it's protected. We don't use the data to train our models. Everything comes back very quickly. And because it's all in memory in our LLM, it's all volatile. It gets overwritten and deleted straight away, all ready for the next prompt to come in. So there is always going to be an element of risk, but the risk is kind of already there. Now, on the other side, we've seen other sort of technologies before where, like Microsoft Delve, for example, and that was an interesting product because that just used to surface content without us asking for it and just saying, oh, hey, look what Tom's been working on recently. But where Copilot is a little bit of a one step further, it has to work off a prompt or a question. So the user has to request that. But there are safeguards in place around that as well. So say like if I ask about a certain project, which is very sensitive, or I might ask Copilot to tell me, is there an Excel spreadsheet with a list of all of our customers? You're able to report on that as well. So whilst there may be, the opportunity for malicious intent or, some things which we shouldn't be asking about, then that can also be reported and audited as well. So there's obviously a fair usage with Copilot in to say, look, this is designed to help you be productive, save time. But if you're trying to use it to either break or really test the vulnerabilities in your environment, you can still report on it. But obviously that's down to, that's a trust element as well with employees. That's down to, you follow your company handbook, you handle data appropriately, you follow the book really well. But obviously having a really good tool like Copilot, which can help you with that, that's always like a consideration just to say, look, we need to bake into our policies, like around the fair use of AI. At Microsoft, we're very, one of the important things around our responsible AI principles is all about accountability. So where Microsoft are accountable for some things with AI, obviously we built the system, our customers are always responsible for their own data as well. So that's very, very important factor to consider. But there's also, going back to, Ian, you touch on the governance and the compliance really well. But generally just like, look at your personas, understand where there is a real need to have Copilot. Obviously, Copilot might not be for everyone, depends on what it is that they're doing. They might not be working in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but they might be working in Teams. So you can find those real niche use cases. And as well as that, the other consideration as well that we're finding very important is also the extensibility of Copilot. So as Microsoft, we understand, I'm going to say three things. Well, let's trim it down to two. The first one is that we understand that not all data lives in Microsoft 365. So how do we tap into that? So we've got some really cool use cases coming out where we can extend Microsoft Graph to incorporate other data sources. So whether you've got like SQL databases, you might have on-premise SharePoint sites, other third-party applications where you can basically connect that and bring that into the Copilot ecosystem. And then the other side of things as well, talking about applications, is that as Microsoft, we understand that not every Microsoft application offers everything that a customer is looking for, which,
no way, Chris, there are other applications out there.
Well, and like we've seen with Teams, we've got thousands of plugins and applications from various SaaS providers that do the job really well. And we can bring that into our M365 environment. And we're doing the same thing with Copilot as well. It's still early days. I mean, I think at the moment there's about 24, 25 vendors at the moment that have made their plugins. So you'll see things like Trello, ServiceNow, Jira from Atlassian. So, it's still early days there, but also consider the other things where, what other resources can we tap into that we can make it a really good Copilot experience?
And you can build on top of that yourselves internally too. I mean, this skews to using a partner or a big organization, but they can build with Copilot Studio line of business for your internal use cases. And that can be really powerful because you're then tapping into something somebody already does and saving them time and effort as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So you see a day when sort of you'll have a call and your actions will go straight to your Trello board.
Yeah, if you ask the prompt to say like Jira or ServiceNow, you're on a phone call and you can say what tickets have got opened up for this person based on our conversation, and it'll patch straight into your third-party plugin and be able to say, right, based on your conversation, this is relating to this ticket. So it just works really well. Or like say like it's patched into your CRM or your ERP systems. This is relating to this opportunity. If you want to update the CRM notes or anything, you can do so straight through Copilot. So at the moment though, as Copilot's still really new, on a phone call it just looks at the transcript, and you can really only lean on the pre-trained model around the conversation and obviously around the transcript as a source of information. But moving forward, we have seen when you're in a meeting or on a phone call, you can then tap in and use those plugins to do things like, a Bing web search or a Jira, a prompt using Jira, or, Copilot for sales, which will use Dynamics or Salesforce. So, yeah, we are sort of bringing that extensibility in. We're still early days, but that will further enhance that experience. So if you're on a phone call, at the moment, transcripts are great for, like, say, after a phone call, because you can then do your wrap up. You can use Copilot and say, can you write an email based on what we talked about? Great. Can I send it off, copy and paste it, put it into Outlook? That'll probably be a little bit more streamlined. But also actually using Copilot during the phone call as well, where you can patch into those applications.
I think things like Sales Copilot as well, where your phone calls are probably more customized, is an interesting use case. And as Chris said rightly, we're kind of on a journey here, but like you can definitely see that CRM integration being like absolute gold dust to anybody that does either service, like the contact center. I say contact center in inverted commas because there's various different scenarios in that subset, or sales, being able to have summaries and notes, and as you say, Ian, potentially in the future suggested actions is going to be amazing.
A really interesting topic though, actually, whilst we're talking about it, is obviously there is an obvious risk to phone calls as well, because ultimately you're having a one-to-one call with someone, and obviously that requires a lot of attention, and the way that we use Copilot is also in a conversational manner. So effectively, you're having, especially if you're using it during a phone call, there is a risk that you're having two conversations. So the risk, of course, is how much attention can I give the person that I'm speaking to compared to if I'm interacting with Copilot. So there's sort of like an accountability piece in there as well, to say, actually, in meetings is a little bit different, because you can slip away a little bit, and if you're not talking and say like you're 10 minutes late to a meeting, you could just use Copilot to catch up. You can't really do that in a phone call. So there are going to be some really interesting use cases coming out for Teams Phone, I think, where it might be that, generally speaking, like say, in a contact center, you will have to tap into those resources. Albeit, when you do things naturally in a CRM system, you're on a platform and you're clicking to the source of information, and you can do that whilst talking with someone. But then if you're talking to someone and then typing in a prompt, it's going to be quite challenging. And obviously I think there's going to be a risk to accessibility here as well, especially with like the neurodiverse, where I can only focus on one thing and I don't want to show someone that I'm not paying attention to them. So there's going to be some real sort of key considerations and usage when we start using phone a lot more.
I find on phone I tend to do it mostly post call, so I'll always hit the button because I'd rather pay attention than make notes, and then I'm kind of safe in the knowledge that I've got the notes. And you know what happens with calls as well, you sometimes they think they're going to go nowhere, and then you get deep suddenly and like, oh, Now I need to remember what the start of the conversation was, because this is more important. Obviously, I treat every phone call with equal importance, but sometimes you're like, oh wait, okay, now I need to remember what we said for the last 20 minutes. So just that knowing that the transcript is there and that I can get the summary, and as you said, Chris, the kind of like the ability to interrogate the call after and go, what is the summary, and ping that round. The other one I see with customers is being able to share that with somebody else. So you're the person who takes the first call, but it's for somebody else, or it's a better use case for somebody else. You've got that, let's be honest, historically, that's a pretty crappy handover, right? It's like, Sarah called, she wants to buy the thing. It's like, well, great. Now I have to start from scratch. And poor Sarah is like, I explained this all to your colleague and now I'm doing it all again, versus the Copilot summary will be like, much more detail about what the scenario was.
That deep conversation actually is quite interesting, because another real use case I find is that if it gets like really complex, or like if you couldn't remember the very beginning of the conversation, that during call use of Copilot could also be used to say, what questions can I ask this person right now? Because it might be that you're stumbling to find things to ask or say based on possibly the nature of the call itself. So we've also seen Copilot to say, look, you're talking about, say, I don't know, say like a subject I don't really, I'm a bit kind of a novice on, say like, we're talking about SQL databases. You guys are talking about, parsing information, merging tables together, and I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. And I can just say, like, Copilot, what questions can I ask Tom right now? And then Copilot say, right, based on the transcript, you can ask Tom about SQL Server reporting services or analytical services. And then if I ask you that question, you go, that's a really good question, Chris. How you're really you're really attentive, and like you know what we're talking about. You don't really want to say, well, I use Copilot, but it's there to help you during those conversations as well. But yeah, there's like that that balance of if you over rely on it too much, you tend to kind of lose the human factor, and that's obviously going to lead into another conversation, of course. But
on that topic, actually, David Long in the chat asked if you're running Copilot on your calls, is that something you need to announce, like recording? And it's a great question, because we haven't really, as a industry/society, settled on that yet. Is like, there's very clear regulation around this call is recorded for regulatory and training purposes, and everybody says that all the time these days, almost to the point where everybody ignores it. Are we going to append AI to that?
You may use AI in this conversation. I haven't seen anything from the IPO just yet. I know that it's not an actual requirement to say that you're using AI, but actually, if I want to know how my data is being handled, or what we're talking about is handled effectively, firstly, you want to make sure it's not like a consumer model where things could get intercepted, but also, in terms of like processing, that is a form of process, because we are sending it off to be, analyzed and responded to by an AI system. It's there to help us. But yeah, I feel like there should be something where, like you said, like this call may be used for training and monitoring purposes, and also may be used for AI. It's just a couple of seconds afterwards, but it's
kind of challenging, because it's what do you define as AI? Because like I saw this I was working with a customer who was doing a RFP, and it was like, explain how you use AI as part of their questions. And I was like, well, I mean, if they use spell check, they use AI. If they use, all our codecs now have AI elements to them in the meeting. So like, everything, I mean, there's no way that Microsoft aren't using AI in their operations of their massive 400 million user service. So like, it's interesting to see where we draw the line, or if we just end up accepting that the reality is you don't say I'm using the internet, like everything's on the internet, that's a given. I wonder if AI will be the same thing. It'll be like, yes, there's AI everywhere. Like Chris said, how you use the data is probably more important. Like, are you securing it appropriately? Is it a proper trusted model?
I'm sure the regulatory side will catch up with us at some point in the future, but I can't have a feeling at the moment it's more of an etiquette question in terms of do you need to be informing people. But it's a fascinating topic, and I think fits nicely into that sort of what do people need to consider. So, and it's this journey, we're still on this journey, and I think harping back to a couple of minutes ago, and we were talking about some of the applications and how it's coming through. There's another great question come through in terms of AI and auto attendance. I think, Tom, you mentioned in there about how the CC contact center vendors are already building this into some of the scenarios. Can you elaborate any more on?
Yeah, I mean, AI is going to have a massive impact on, customer contact center, whatever you want to call that kind of segment of the industry. So you're seeing a lot of the team certified contact centers, because they're built, on Azure, or at least Azure adjacent, using cognitive services, bringing in some of that technology. And initially, it's more scenarios like, post-call summaries and pushing data into CRM. They're all being quite tentative about putting AI directly in front of the customer, not because just the technology, but also you as an organization are then liable for what the AI gives or says. So you have to be very careful about training and data. So I think we'll start to see it as coaching the agent and providing information and summaries. But I have zero doubt, like at some point, it's going to be an option on auto attendants to be like, wait for an agent or press 1 to interact with our AI. And even if it can cover the fundamental questions, where's my order? What's the, authenticate me? What are the opening hours? I've got this issue. I'm really excited for that, because it's going to be potentially a better experience for the user and a more cost-effective solution for the customer. So it's one of those rare cases in technology where you can both save money and improve the experience.
Yeah. And we've all been stuck in some of those IVR systems.
Yeah, I don't hear anybody saying that contact center experience is amazing and there's nothing that could be better. Like you can argue about how good or bad, but there's room for improvement there. I think everybody agrees.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, I think, okay, so we've talked a lot about the applications and the use cases, which I think has been brilliant. So what sort of, how does the licensing work? What does a customer need to get going on this Copilot journey?
Yeah.
Chris, you want to go?
Yeah, can do. So largely, Copilot is always designed to be, user centric. So there's always going to be a user licensing model. That does deviate a little bit depending on if you're on the fence around buying Copilot or building your own Copilot. So as with anything within, OpenAI, and especially around Azure, there are some consumption models that you can look at as well. So that's based on things like, your messages and your prompts being sent, or the transactions that occur. More or less, the Copilots that we're building into our applications, some of the features you'll see are already included. So if you already use Copilot in Bing, that's a free consumer service. Copilot in Windows, that's obviously if you've got Windows 11 at a certain version. So there are some things that are already baked in. So that's not too bad. So where you've got the commercial data protection, that qualifies if you've got an M365, a qualifying Microsoft 365 license. But where you've got things like, Copilot for Sales, Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's usually based around a per user model where you pay a certain amount for the license. At the moment, Microsoft 365 was one of the latest ones to come out. Obviously, before we had a bit of a threshold around 300. We've dropped that.
Don't gloss over that, Chris, because that's quite big news, and not everybody's caught up with that. Is now you can buy from 1 seat and up. So for people on this call who are thinking of going on the journey, this was previously a 100k plus kind of yes or no. Now it's a £360 yes or no on a per user basis.
Yeah, it's another good topic as well, Tom, because at the moment, even though we have got the licensing models on CSP, for example, which of course usually is a monthly model, or even if you buy direct, that was monthly as well. Copilot for Microsoft 365 at the moment, you have to pay up front for the year. So you mentioned that 300 ex-VAT sort of cost as well. So that's also something to consider, is that if you're planning on trialing, just be mindful that if you buy one license, it will be for a whole year. So if that aligns to you're going to be using it and testing it for a year and you can already see the value, that's great. But yeah, definitely around the removal of the 300 threshold, it's certainly now allowed a lot of different tenancies and different companies and organizations to start a little bit smaller as well, because typically with a Microsoft trial you would have 25, 50 that follow things like your Teams rooms, your Teams phone, start off with a manageable amount of users where you can collect feedback. You can start trying to break it if you want to, or you can then start to test the security, compliance. build in a good operational model, if you run, if you apply to things like ITIL processes, then that's great. But yeah, that lower threshold has certainly helped, because we grab the feedback from a load of organizations. 300 as a starting point is great, but in terms of a pilot, it's really difficult to manage sometimes as well. So, and then of course you've got your smaller SMCs where, they might only have 500 people, and you're then like trying to roll out 60%, 70% of their organization. So yeah, certainly that threshold has been a real, that threshold being lowered has certainly been a real benefit.
Yeah, I think, if you're any kind of size of organization, I think I would, as Chris said, there's kind of, there's two security consideration. One is like, do you trust Microsoft? Well, like if you're on Microsoft 365, I feel like that ship sailed. You do trust them because you've given them all your email, all your documents, so that's normally not an issue in organizations that are Microsoft 365. Then is our data totally aligned and permissioned correctly? But if you're able to cap the risk at, we're going to do a 10-person pilot inside of trusted BAs in IT, you're limiting that risk as well, but you're getting on the bandwagon. I feel like at a CTO level or a board level, you can't really be, and happy to be challenged on this, you can't really be the organization that's ignoring AI. It's too important to everybody, to the industry, to not have a stance on it. It might not be for you, it might not go down that road, but you want to know what the capabilities are. And Chris said, where are the challenges, where are the drawbacks? It's early, it's not a perfect product, like there's a journey here. So you can't really understand it without getting a little bit hands-on in your organization, I don't think.
No, I agree. I think it's, and you mentioned something and I've forgotten what you mentioned now. I was just to pick up on a point, but it'll come back.
Check the Copilot transcript.
Check the Copilot transcript. Yeah, I'll come back to you when I've got that.
It's a real good use case. Yeah.
Yeah, real good use case for sort of old guys that can't remember what's just been said. Yeah, no, but I think you're alluding there to some of the sort of profiles of uses and the use case in terms of where it fits and benefits organizations. And do you see that the benefit is pretty much agnostic to whether you're a large organization or a small organization? It feels to me as if it's one of those technologies which can have benefits across multiple size of organizations, multiple sectors, whereas so many other sort of applications and technologies are specific. You can see, there's more benefit for those there and those sort of users. I know that a type of user might be different, so frontline worker might be different to knowledge worker, but in terms of the size of organization, do you feel that's a kind of uniform benefit?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so regardless of size, because at the end of the day, it's the number. I appreciate there's obviously other benefits to that around things like revenue and reputation, stature, but obviously where you're looking at the real sort of not the foundations, but the people that are basically running or driving that business forward or organization forward, they're the people that need, overall from a people perspective, they need taken care of, they need looking after. And this kind of comes back to where we were trying to look at solutions like employee experience, where their happiness, their retention, and their dedication to the cause is paramount. So if we can give them an AI tool that can help them with that, then you'll see other sort of benefits as well, like staff retention, mental well-being. There was some really interesting stats around sick days. There was something in one of my colleagues in local authorities was looking at social care, and there was an interesting and alarming rate of the amount of people that were going off sick because of stress-related illnesses. And where Copilot can help them with that, they saw, certainly one of the early access customers saw a decrease in the number of people that were reporting as being unwell. There were other things around, certainly the wrap-up times for contact center agents as well. So there was an increase in quality in the wrap-up times. There was an increase in quality in the actual responses to those customers as well, around, like Tom said, about simple questions, around things that you can easily match up against a certain FAQ and say, Copilot, can you match these two together and answer the question for me? Not a problem at all. So yeah, some real use benefits there. And I think when I mentioned it at the very start, there should be a Copilot for absolutely everyone. It's not going to be, you're going to use Copilot in every single application, because that's never going to happen. But yeah, certainly around the use cases, there'll be an element of your day-to-day life where, Tom mentioned before, we are already using AI. Whether we're talking to Siri on our iPhone, or we're going clothes shopping online, like you mentioned about checking our grammar, or plotting our destination. AI is already here, so it's just to say that there's going to be an AI assistant there as well that's going to help you as well.
I think another thing to consider along those lines for organizations is, right, AI's gone way beyond like the techies, right? It's mainstream. Everybody's talking about the impact it will have. People are going to be using it and trying stuff. And if you don't give them a corporately sanctioned route, they are for sure going out to the consumer models. Like, this is no doubt. So, like, I mean, the $30 a user a month for the Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's an investment. It's a consideration. You have to think about the ROI there. If you've got ME365 or you've got Office 365, you can add the commercial data protection for $5 a user. I think that's a really good jump off point for a lot of people, because you're giving a tool, you're getting to see if there's usage, you're getting some accessibility that it's not as powerful as the full Microsoft 365 Copilot, but it's a step along the journey there. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. There's a kind of staircase there of getting some usage, and you can still do a lot with that tool. It's still really a good starting point.
Yeah, there's loads of useful content out there on the open web, so why not tap into that? So if you're happy to say, look, we understand there's some rich data in our M365 environment, then great, we'll look at Copilot for Microsoft 365. You can have a blend of the two together. So I mentioned before about that overlap. So say, for example, in your Copilot app in Teams, you can turn on a web content switch. So what it will also do as well is look at your M365 data, but also have a look what's out there on the open web. So it will reference where it grabbed the information from. So if there's like a really great SharePoint site, but also there's a really good website here as well. A really good example, I ask Copilot a lot what volunteering programs are available in the UK. So obviously in our various EIGs, we've got that information, but also Microsoft on the web, or content on the web, also tells you what volunteering programs are available from other resources as well. So the benefits of both are great, but you can use them separately, as Tom mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating, and I was going to ask the question about what are you seeing outside in the world of the client, and I think you've probably both answered that quite comprehensively. So I think I'm going to move on to my next. We had a question come in, and I'm not suggesting we have a sneak peek at the roadmap, Chris. So don't worry, I'm not going to put you on the spot for that one. But when we were talking through this in the preparation, and you already alluded to it slightly as well, it's what the future looks like and the value for business. And you came up with this sort of 4-step, sort of out of the box, trained, true AI, and then sort of the BYO integration type of pockets. And I found that fascinating in terms of where you see the real value coming. So I don't know whether you can remember what you said to me, but if you could elaborate a little bit more on where you see the future and the developments coming, that would be great.
Yeah. So I think where we are at the moment is that as large language models and GPT originally was not designed, but obviously when it was built to look at the text, the analysis of language, and obviously learning about content that's out there in the public domain in terms of how it can help us create content. So obviously with ChatGPT, you say, can you write me a poem? It does it really well. So in terms of text, it works extremely well. And that obviously aligns to Microsoft because we work in the text, with Word, PowerPoint, and all that good stuff. And in terms of what it can do there is great. And then where we've kind of been working to improve that experience. So Excel is a really good example. Excel is still in a bit of a preview state because it's more than text. We're talking about numbers, formulas, a lot of real scientific calculation going on in the background, especially with all the Excel shortcuts you can fathom as well. So we are still working in those regards there as well. There's still a load of work that we're doing, say in PowerPoint, where we're working with making the designer experience a lot more rich. And yeah, so those are sort of some key areas where, when we're looking at numbers and the visual side of things is actually really quite interesting. I think that's going to be another area that we're going to tap into. So if you've seen just recently, OpenAI launched, so there was the GPT-4V where you're able to upload images into the LLM, and then the LLM can generate a text output. So you can say, right, here's an image of a beach. I want you to describe that for me. And it works really well. So we're certainly seeing things in the imagery. And like just recently, you may have seen that OpenAI also launched Soro, SORO, that text to video. That's crazy. That's absolutely phenomenal. Just where you can put in a simple prompt and then it will make a very short video clip. And like it's just I think those sort of revolutionary cutting edge can also be used, say like in the Microsoft 365 world, obviously depending on what you're doing as well. I certainly see audio being a good place to develop as well. So, when we go back to Teams phone, and especially looking at the transcript, there's been loads of conversation around, well, how does it detect sarcasm? And to be honest, it doesn't. So if I said, oh, this is a really good meeting, you can see that my facial expression and my tone of voice is, oh, yeah, he's really being sarcastic. But Copilot doesn't see that. It just sees a text that says, this is a really good meeting. So I think there's going to be some really good stuff around audio as well. Like you already see in, other contact center solutions where it does look at the sentiment. If you're angry on a call, I can sense the tone and I can score that. Say at this point, this call was quite negative. You want to take a look at this part of the call. So I can see Copilot doing some clever things there as well. Just a little bit.
We have that in contact center today, so it's definitely technically feasible, isn't it? It's interesting to see where the line gets drawn.
So it's just the way that if Copilot then sent that to the LLM, you've got a sizing problem because obviously audio, or even bigger than that video, you're sending loads of you're sending lots of megabytes of data off to the services. How do we basically streamline that and make sure that we don't get any bottlenecks? Text is a little bit smaller, so it's not too bad, and also it goes up on a bit of a handshake, so it sends certain, when you use Copilot, you can see that it brings back certain paragraphs only at certain points. So it's there like churning through bits and bits at a time. But obviously with audio and video, it's a constant feed. You're moving from, TCP to UDP, and it's like a little bit different. So there's some things around performance that would probably be needing to be looked at. So, yeah, I think audio and video would be really quite key to the future of especially around generative AI as well.
Fascinating. Tom, I can see that you've been doing a fantastic job in trying to answer a lot of the questions as they've been coming through on the chat. Is there any that we've kind of missed that we need to go back upon?
No, I think we got most, and there's been a good chat about the ROI and $30 and that price point, and it's a fair conversation, right? If you're like you need to justify the ROI. Microsoft have put that price because they think that's justifiable, but it's a conversation for each organization. But I would just reiterate, it's not. In my experience, it's not a license you're just going to blanket out, right? It's something that you have to see a use case for, you have to have a conversation about, and you have to train the users as well. Like, this is a new technology and new capabilities. Yes, it's a text prompt, so people can sort of play with it and get some use out of it, but there's actually a fair bit to it in terms of leveraging the most out of it. So each org has to make a decision, but I just don't see, certainly in enterprise, I don't see anybody not having to have an answer to the CTO and up of do we want it or not? Have we tried it or not? Because it's too impactful. And the other thing I would bear in mind is the crazy thing is this is the worst it's ever going to be. Like, it's only getting kind of better and better. And you see the jumps, particularly if you watch the OpenAI news. Obviously, Microsoft are very tied in with OpenAI. You see the jumps in technology. That's all going to flow through to us in the Microsoft 365 world in time. So it's the beginning, but I don't think there's any going back from where we are now.
No, I agree. And I mean, we've been in exactly the same situation. And the $30, it's kind of, you do need to look at the use cases. But we've actually found some with some of the AI that we're using in house. It does make a big difference to people's productivity and efficiency. And I haven't yet had anybody that's using it that's come back and said, well, now take it away from me, I can't see the benefit. It's made that difference. And I think it's a very valid point you make, Tom, in the fact that we're still in our infancy in this, in terms of Copilot, not in terms of AI, in terms of Copilot. And I think it's only going to get improve better from here.
Yeah, another interesting topic as well is that, when it comes to the real value in, justifying that cost as well, a lot of customers really want to see those numbers, those those real truthful numbers. Sometimes when it comes to Microsoft, when it comes to return on investment, we tend to, we generate some really good values of return on investment, like, you can save millions of dollars a year and stuff. But in terms of how that relates to the time saved and other sort of, the more realistic numbers, as I call them, a lot of the time customers need support in those areas as well. So a really good technique I tend to focus on when I'm talking about Copilot is that at the moment, your users are already consuming Microsoft 365. So there are already some stats that you can tap into where you can break off between your real heavy, I'm not going to say your most productive, but they live in Microsoft 365. They are always, they're in 4 to 5 meetings a day. They're saving 3 documents to SharePoint a day. They're sending out 50 emails a day. So those stats can already be collected. So in terms of trying to summarize or trying to justify that, if you then say, right, $30 a month, that relates to, say, like, I don't know, an hour and a half of someone's time in a month. Okay, so we're looking at saving an hour and a half of their time, or maybe even more than that. Obviously, the more time saved, even better. So with those stats that they're already consuming the M365 technologies, like if I send an email that can be logged, there are some tools already available that can help you get those numbers and then say, right, the average task of sending an email, Copilot can save you at least 5 minutes. If I then send 100 emails out in a month, that's 500 minutes. Instantly there's your time saved, and then you can say, right, that's your value basically. Now obviously that's for real heavy hitting users, but in terms of like then say incentivizing someone to say, well, actually, because of my say like I'm not really too comfortable with all these meetings, so I'm going to miss them, or and then you can say, right, well, using Copilot you can still join those meetings, but you can then use Copilot afterwards. Or like, say, for example, they make 1 document a week, and with Copilot, they're now comfortable and confident and they can make 4 or 5. So yeah, there's a really great tool called the M365 Usage Analytics that we've been promoting quite well. It's been out for absolutely ages. It's a Power BI report, and it taps into Microsoft Graph, and it then gives you those stats. So you can basically filter out from the last month or the whole year and says, right, we're going to agree that the ideal Copilot user needs to be in 3 meetings a day. So if you say there's 20 business days in a month, you times that 3 by 20. So we're looking at someone that's in over 60 meetings a month. And using this tool, you can also see that. And then using that 60, you can say, right, if we can save you 10 minutes per meeting, out of those 60 meetings, you're then saving 600 minutes. There's your value, and you can then justify and build up really good business cases as well.
Yeah, no, it's good insight. It's a great way of looking at it, and I think quantifying that is going to be important to many organizations, because I think so many times the efficiency and the productivity is seen as a kind of a soft benefit to some extent, and then quantifying it is often seen as being a bit vague. But I think it's a very valid point. As I say, in some of the examples that we've seen in-house, at the time saving and efficiency, we've actually, you can clearly see that people's output has increased. They're using the time that they're saving to do something else. So I think it's very valid. I'm very conscious we're getting close to the top of the hour. I think there's been some great questions, some great conversation going on here. Is there anything before we sign off, gents, that you'd like to leave, or something we've not addressed, or any advice you want to give?
Yeah, I think it's been a really good conversation, and thanks everybody. We had a great turnout, so thanks everybody for coming and the great chat. I think it's too important a topic to not be educated and informed on. So like, I absolutely hear the ROI, and I think that is a really sensible approach to take with all technology, right? Technologists want to sell technology, it's the new thing, but like that doesn't mean you shouldn't test it and check it out and see if it meets your bar. And whatever the answer is, at least you've got that information. And now it's up from a seat. I just think that's a level where any serious organisation, even a small one, can try it out. And you might be surprised about some of the capabilities. So I think it's exciting times for me anyway.
Anything from yourself, Chris, or are you
putting
you on the spot?
It's getting late in the day. I've got to run out of things to say. So I guess the other thing as well, I mean, there was a mention about, obviously, if you don't have transcription turned on, or, that's obviously where Copilot would struggle, because if you don't have transcript, and more importantly, if you don't have data, then Copilot will just, it will fall by the wayside. So definitely take a look at those policies about, okay, we accept that we do have to turn on transcription, but then, of course, you can back that up with things like retention policies. There's there's a setting now where you can just use Copilot during the meeting. So afterwards, there's basically like a temporary saved transcript, and then after the meeting ends, it just disappears. So some really good safeguards in place as well. But I appreciate that there's other things that may counteract where Copilot will work. A really good example is, say, like in Teams Premium, you can turn on end-to-end encryption. And obviously, if you've turned that on, then Copilot won't work as well, because it's encrypted start to finish, and Copilot can't retrieve that information. So definitely have a look at those policies where if you do turn off certain features, then that will impact that experience. So definitely review things like, the transcription side of things, review your sensitivity labels, review your retention. Retention's a very important one, because you don't want Copilot retrieving a 20-year-old document saying this is factually correct. So yeah, just really have considerations around your existing environment and where Copilot can help you. I think that'll be my last little swan song, as it were.
Advice for nugget of advice. Thank you very much. Well, gentlemen, look, thank you very much for your time and your insights there. I think it's been really, really good session. I think we've had one of the attendees say it's gone really quick, and I appreciate everybody turning out and spending your afternoon or part of your afternoon with us. I appreciate how valuable time is. So thank you very much for that. This will be available as an on-demand pre-recorded session. So if you've already registered for the event, you'll get that link sent to you, so you can review it and go back and see what nuggets we've imparted to you, and keep it for 12 months and see where we are and whether or not we've been right in what we predicted. So brilliant. Tom, Chris, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for everybody's attendance. Look forward.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's been fun. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys.
Cheers.
Bye.